Failure doesn't break most people, it teaches them, but only if they're willing to listen, only if they stop treating it like the end and start seeing it for what it really is, a beginning. Failure isn't final, it's feedback. It's data. It's life handing you the raw material for your next breakthrough. But most people never reach that turning point because they quit too soon. They let shame speak louder than reflection. They let judgment drown out the lesson. They decide that failure is a reflection of who they are instead of what happened. And, in doing so, they miss the gift. They miss the opportunity to learn, to grow, to sharpen, to rebuild from a more honest and grounded place. They miss the chance to rise not in spite of the fall, but because of it. Because failure is not just an event, it's an invitation. And it only arrives for those brave enough to try. You don't fail because you're weak. You fail because you're human. Because you stretched. Because you moved forward instead of staying where it was safe. That's not weakness. That's movement. And all movement carries risk. But risk is the price of growth. You can't build strength without pressure. You can't build resilience without resistance. You'll never know what you're capable of if you're not willing to test your edge. You'll never find your edge if you're always avoiding it. So failure comes. It interrupts your plans. It humbles your confidence. It throws you off balance. But it also builds you if you're willing to see the mirror it holds up. If you don't run from it, it will shape you. Because no matter how prepared you are, no matter how gifted or disciplined or driven, life will knock you down. Plans will collapse. People will disappoint. You will fall short. That's not the real test. The test is what you do next. Do you hide? Spiral? Internalize? The loss is proof you were never enough? Or do you pause, reflect, extract the lesson, and come back stronger? Not because you avoided the fall, but because you learned to rise differently. You weren't made to stay down. You weren't built to fear failure. You were designed to evolve through it, to gain wisdom, depth, clarity, things that only come when life breaks your rhythm and forces you to rebuild your foundation. So stop fearing failure. Stop trying to protect your pride by watering down your effort. A life without failure is a life without risk, and a life without risk is a life without growth. You weren't born to stay the same. You were born to grow, not just when life is smooth, but especially when it's not. When it stings, when it hurts, when it falls apart. That's where transformation begins. That's where your next level is born. But it starts with how you define failure. Because if you keep calling it defeat, you'll never extract the wisdom. If you treat it like a reflection of who you are instead of what you're learning, you'll stay stuck. Not because of the failure, but because of how you framed it. Failure is not personal, but most people take it personally. They say, I failed instead of that failed. They internalize it, attach identity to the result, and carry the weight into every next step. But you don't fail because you're broken. You fail because you're growing, because you're reaching into unfamiliar territory, because you're doing something most people are too afraid to do. Try. Most people stay in the middle. They protect their image, they avoid the edge, and they never find out what they're made of. But when you're willing to fail, you get access to the truth. Failure reveals what success conceals. It shows you your weak points. It shows you what needs work. It reveals the gap between illusion and actual strength. But you'll only see that if you stop avoiding the mirror. If you stop blaming and start observing. If you stop judging and start investigating. That's when you shift from shame to strategy, From "I'm such a failure" to "What broke down and how do I fix it?" You stop reacting emotionally and start responding intelligently. You become a scientist of your own process. You collect data, study patterns, make adjustments, and you come back not as someone starting over, but as someone building wiser. That's growth, not perfection, but progression. Not always getting it right, but always staying in the process long enough to get better. And the person who keeps learning, keeps correcting, keeps showing up, that's the person who rises. Not because they don't fall, but because they learn on the way down. You stop asking, "How can I avoid failure?" and start asking, "How can I fail better? How can I recover faster? How can I make the fall worth it?" You begin to see failure not as a wound, but as wisdom. Not as a setback, but as insight. You flip the script, and in doing so, you take the sting out of it. You strip away the shame. You stop hesitating. You stop hiding. You start moving faster, testing more, creating more. Because now you're not afraid of failing. You're afraid of staying stuck. You're no longer obsessed with looking perfect. You're committed to becoming better. And that shift? It changes everything. You build resilience. You don't bounce back. You build forward. You emerge with more than you had before. More clarity, more humility, more tools, more insight. Because you stopped blaming and started building. And when you build from that posture, when you use your failure instead of fearing it, you become dangerous. Not to others, but to your former self. The version of you that used to shrink, that used to hide, that used to give up. That version can't lead anymore. Because you've chosen growth. You've chosen progress over perfection, evolution over ego. And that choice transforms you. You become the kind of person who doesn't need guarantees, who doesn't crumble when things don't go as planned, who isn't defined by outcomes, but anchored in identity. You know who you are not because everything went right, but because you stayed grounded when it didn't. Most people don't have that. They fall apart when failure shows up, not because they're weak, but because they never built the inner foundation to handle it. But you can. And it starts with one decision: to separate your worth from your results. You are not what you achieve. You are who you choose to be, especially when things fall apart. The wins don't make you better. The losses don't make you less. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop tying your identity to things outside your control. You feel the loss, but you're not owned by it. And that freedom, it gives you power. The power to move forward, to pivot, to keep building. Because now you're not building for validation. You're building from vision, from integrity, from alignment with who you're becoming. So when failure comes, and it will, you don't spiral. You reflect. You breathe. You ask the deeper questions. What does this show me about how I see myself? Where did I compromise presence for performance? Where did I trade truth for image? And in those answers, you find your next step, not in perfection, but in alignment. Those questions, they sting, but they also set you free. They clear away what no longer serves you and help you rebuild, this time without ego, without masks, without the fear of being misunderstood. Because now, you're grounded. You're building from a place of identity, not for it. And when you're grounded, failure becomes just another step in the journey, part of the rhythm. It humbles you, yes, but it doesn't shake your core. It sharpens you, yes, but it doesn't make you retreat, because you know who you are now, and no outcome can take that away. This is the version of you that doesn't flinch, doesn't fake it, doesn't break down when things get tough. This is the version anchored and trained, whose nervous system is prepared to face loss without losing itself, who has built resilience not by avoiding failure, but by rising again and again. The more you live this way, the more you separate what happened from who you are, and the greater your capacity becomes. You stop fearing failure. You start embracing risk. You start trying new things, saying yes to big ideas, letting go of what no longer fits. And when people ask you how you keep going, how you bounce back, how you keep showing up after falling that hard, you won't have some fancy answer. You'll just smile, because it was never about avoiding the fall. It was about learning how to rise. Failure doesn't just test your identity, it tests your entire system. It forces you to look under the hood and ask, what broke? Not out of shame, but out of strategy. Because sometimes the fall wasn't due to weakness. It was caused by blind spots, cracks in your foundation that you never saw until something gave way. Most people keep building on autopilot. They form habits they never question, routines they never design, priorities they never choose intentionally. When things go well, it feels fine. But the moment they don't, the flaws reveal themselves. In chaos, your true systems show how you handle emotions, manage time, respond to uncertainty, cope with pressure. If you don't pay attention, failure will keep repeating for the same reasons, just wearing different clothes. But if you're willing to pause, zoom out, break the spiral, and ask better questions, you can start upgrading everything. Not just how you feel, but how you function. Not just what you want, but how you build. Failure is a feedback loop. It points to the breaking point. Not saying you're not good enough, but that your approach no longer works. If you can hear that without flinching, without collapsing, you'll evolve faster than most. Start with your habits. What behaviors led to the breakdown? What were you doing, or not doing, that left the system vulnerable? Were you underprepared, overbooked, avoiding tough conversations, delaying decisions, relying on guesswork instead of structure? Take inventory, not with shame, but with strategy. What needs to change in your preparation? What boundaries need shifting? What must be added to your calendar? What should be cleared from your emotional space? The world's most successful people don't just reflect on what went wrong. They rebuild better systems. They don't try harder. They design smarter. They get curious, analyze, and adjust the structure, not just the surface. Those systems become your safety net. They steady you when motivation dips, protect your energy when emotions run high, and ensure your recovery doesn't depend on willpower, but on clarity. You start building habits that support your vision, morning routines that ground you, recovery practices that reset you, communication patterns that reinforce alignment, boundaries that conserve your capacity. And those systems, they scale, stack, compound. You stop guessing, stop winging it, stop starting over every time life hits, because now you have something tested, something built from the wisdom that only failure can teach. You stop fearing the next breakdown, because when it comes, and it will, you know exactly what to do. You'll study the pattern, find the gap, patch the leak, and come back stronger. Not because you're invincible, but because you're aware. This is the difference between those who evolve and those who repeat. Those who evolve don't just work harder after falling. They study, adapt, and rebuild the blueprint. You're not here just to try again. You're here to build better, to refine how you live, to bring awareness into your daily rhythm, to stop tolerating systems that crumble under pressure. Every time you do that, rewire a habit, reinforce a boundary, recalibrate priorities, You build resilience. Not just emotional resilience, but functional resilience. The kind that lets you move cleaner, think sharper, breathe deeper, and build stronger. This is how failure stops being something to fear and becomes something you expect, prepare for, and leverage, not because you're negative, but because you're wise. Because failure is part of the rhythm, and when you're ready for it, you stop being reactive and start being responsible. You start asking, is this sustainable? Is this aligned with where I'm going? Is this the kind of system that can hold me when the next wave hits? And if the answer is no, you start building, not from shame, but with strategy, clarity, and strength. Failure often isolates you. It convinces you that you're alone, that no one else has fallen this hard, that no one understands your burden, that if they did, they'd walk away, that if you told the truth, they'd judge you. So you hold it in silence. You carry it alone. You may smile on the outside while struggling deeply inside, but isolation is where shame grows. And shame, more than failure itself, is what keeps people stuck. It's not the mistake that traps you, but the meaning you attach to it. Not the fall itself, but the silence that follows. Not the struggle, but the story you tell yourself about what it says about who you are. Here's the truth. Everyone falls. Everyone. The people you admire. The ones whose lives seem polished. The leaders who move with confidence. They've all fallen. Some falls are public, some private, some dramatic, some quiet. But no one builds a meaningful life without bruises. What separates those who rise isn't perfection. It's connection. It's the courage to stay honest, to stay open, to be surrounded by others, to let someone in, not for pity, not for rescue, but for reflection, realignment, and healing. Healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in community. It happens when you stop pretending and find people who hold space for you, who won't flinch when you tell the truth, who won't walk away when you admit your struggle, who offer presence before advice. That's why your environment matters so much. The right people can either reinforce your shame or help you rewrite your story. They remind you who you are when you forget. They reflect strength you no longer see in yourself, but you have to let them in. You have to be honest. You have to drop the performance. Stop pretending you're fine. There's no power in pretending. It may protect your image, but it starves your growth. The truth is, most people will love you more when you're real. When you stop trying to impress and start letting them see you. When you stop hiding behind a mask and say, this is where I am. This is what I'm facing. This is what I'm learning. That kind of vulnerability isn't weakness. It's strength. The kind that disarms shame, opens doors, and builds trust. Once you taste that connection, you stop settling for shallow circles. You stop wasting energy trying to be liked by everyone. You don't need everyone. You need the right ones. The ones who hear your pain without rushing to fix it. The ones who sit with your silence without changing the subject. The ones who speak truth, who call you higher, not just comfort you. When you build that circle, when you decide you're done building alone, failure loses its edge. Because you know you're not alone anymore. You have mirrors, not just echoes. You're building in the light, and that light brings healing, perspective, and clarity you can't find on your own. Sometimes you're too close to the pain to see the lesson. You need someone who loves you enough to say, you're not seeing clearly, but I'm here until you do. That kind of support multiplies strength. It shortens the gap between breakdown and breakthrough. It reminds you failure doesn't define you, but it does shape you. And when shaped in the presence of safe, sharp people, you emerge stronger. So if you've been trying to do this alone, stop. You weren't made to carry it all yourself. The longer you hold it in silence, the longer you delay your breakthrough. Start telling the truth, not to everyone, but to someone. Someone who's earned your trust. Someone who's built resilience of their own. Who knows how to listen, how to hold space without shrinking. And if you don't have that person yet, be that person first. Create the space, build the circle, set the tone. You're not the only one struggling. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is go first. Failure is hard, but it doesn't have to be lonely. When it's not lonely, it becomes something else entirely. A lesson, a catalyst, a moment in your story that no longer feels like the end, but a new kind of beginning. Failure doesn't just test your identity, your systems, or your support. It tests your vision. Because when something breaks, when plans fall apart, the question isn't just what went wrong, but do you still believe in where you're going? Many confuse the method with the mission, mistaking the plan for the destination. When that plan falls apart, they assume the dream has died too. But the plan is just one path. The vision is still alive. The dream is still real. It's just asking to be carried differently now. When you realize that, when you stop clinging to how it was supposed to happen and start asking how it still can, you reclaim your power. You stop trying to rewind or argue with the past. You get present. You get creative. You get resourceful. Failure doesn't mean it's over. It means it's time to pivot, to reevaluate, to sharpen your strategy, and ensure you're still heading toward something that matters, something true. Sometimes failure isn't a block, it's a redirect, a nudge, a wake-up call. The more flexible you are, the faster you rise. Not because you're careless, but because you're not fragile. You've anchored your belief in something deeper than a single plan. Your commitment runs wider than your schedule. That's the mark of a leader, a builder, someone creating something real. They don't fold when one door closes. They ask, "Where's the next one? What did I learn? How does this strengthen the foundation?" Vision doesn't mean never failing. It means not stopping when you do. It means zooming out, reconnecting with why you started, stripping away the superficial, and doubling down on what's core. Failure exposes the fluff, shows you what didn't matter, burns off distractions, strips away ego. Underneath, if you're still clear and committed, you've got something real. But if you let the fall kill your belief, you'll never see what's on the other side. You'll never find the new path or unlock the next level. Because real faith gets tested in the valley, not the mountaintop. So when the fall comes, and it will, you pause, breathe, feel the grief, honor the loss, then ask, what still matters? What was real? What's worth carrying forward? And you keep building. You don't wait for clarity to feel easy. You earn it through questions, through stillness, through discomfort. Little by little, your feet find the path again. Not the one you planned, but the one that's real now. This is where resilience is built. Not by avoiding failure, but by adapting without losing focus, shifting without spiraling, holding vision, steady while letting the method evolve. The more you live this way, the more you realize failure doesn't take vision from you. It reveals how much you really had. If it was only about performance, the fall would destroy you. But if it's about purpose, the fall refines you. You write a new plan, ask better questions, bring your experience to the next chapter, move forward, not as someone starting over, but as someone moving wiser, sharper, stronger. Now you build not blindly, but with scars that taught you, with patterns you've outgrown, with systems you've upgraded. What you build next won't just stand taller, it will stand longer. Because you're no longer building on hope alone. You're building on history, earned wisdom, and tested belief. You build with eyes wide open, and that kind of building lasts. It withstands. It multiplies. So don't stop now. Don't stay down. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't look for the same road. Look for the next one. Reconnect with what matters. Reignite your vision. Build again. You've walked through every layer of this, not the surface, not the highlight reel, but the real stuff. The truth of failure. The wisdom within it, the growth it offers, and the identity only shaped by hardship. Failure is not your enemy. It's your mentor, not a signal to stop, but a signal to pay attention, to reevaluate, rebuild, and rise with something new. When you come out the other side with insight, self-awareness, and deeper roots, you haven't lost, you've leveled up. You don't need to avoid the next fall. You need to stop fearing it. Know this, when it comes, it won't destroy you. It will develop you. It will refine you. It will shape you into the kind of person who doesn't just recover, but returns wiser, stronger, and more dangerous to the old version of themselves than ever before. You're not fragile. You've just been conditioned to play it safe. But safety doesn't unlock potential. Failure does. From this moment forward, stop living in fear of being wrong. Stop watering down your goals because of what might go sideways. Stop staying small to avoid being seen trying. You were born to build, to lead, to expand, to evolve. That evolution always comes with failure. Not once, but often. But now, you know how to face it, how to listen, how to ask better questions, how to separate your worth from your outcomes, how to design better systems, lean on stronger support, and reconnect with a vision. You're ready. The only thing left is to use it. Not tomorrow, not when it's convenient, but now. Show up for your life with the full understanding that failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of it. So when it comes, welcome it. Sit with it. Study it. Don't rush past it. Don't numb it. Don't judge yourself for it. Use it. Let it build you. Let it humble you. Let it teach you what success never could. Because what's built through failure is deeper, stronger, and real. And the life you're building now, the one on the other side of disappointment, difficulty, and detours, is not delayed. It's being developed, and you are right on time.